I said that Biden is a representative of the traditional political school, and this is proved.
Putin's new threat, saying he's ready to use nuclear weapons after Ukraine's massive drone strike on Russia.
Tucker Carlson shines like a light in a world filled with secrets and soft voices, encouraging everyone to spend just a few minutes uncovering the truth. Like a warrior who has seen many battles in the fight for the truth behind Russia, Carlson reaches out to those ready to question what is commonly accepted, to those who wish to look past the usual stories we hear. Is it true that Putin wants to throw a nuclear bomb and everybody is hiding it? Come along on an adventurous journey into uncharted territory as we accompany Tucker Carlson in his quest to unveil secrets lurking just beyond our sight. Navigating truth in a world where everyone has an agenda. He's not just asking for your attention, he's practically demanding that you wake up. Tucker presents himself as the leader, the one holding the light in a thick mist of wrong information, offering a way to see clearly amid the mess. The 15 minutes he talks about isn't just a bit of time. It's a door to understanding, a short journey through the maze of what's real and what's fake. The scene is against the backdrop of a world overflowing with data but desperately lacking in real insight. Here, Carlson's voice stands out, strong and clear, cutting through the clutter, giving a sense of direction in a confusing world. This effort is more than just sharing news. It's a quest to teach, to pull back the curtains on truths that are often kept hidden by those in power. As the audience watches, tense and full of expectation, Carlson shares truths that shake up what we think we know, stories that go against what's usually accepted. This dive into the not-so-known is not easy. It takes bravery, an open mind, and the readiness to face truths that might be hard to accept. In this somber and serious tone, the focus is on the core of Carlson's message. It's a rallying cry for those tired of shallow explanations, for those searching for the deep, raw truth of our era. With every word, Tucker Carlson aims not just to inform, but to change, to light a spark of understanding that can brighten the darkest parts of our knowledge. In a dimly lit room, filled with the tension of expectation, in the gaze of an audience not seen, he stood, visibly nervous and clearly burdened with thoughts. This display of anxiety was surprising and very interesting. It showed a man who might have been overwhelmed by his own plans, a person caught in the trap of his detailed schemes. This way of handling the conversation, something learned from years of experience, seemed out of place. The old wisdom advised the value of being genuine, the strength of standing true to oneself without hiding behind prepared speeches. To be caught in one's own lies was a dangerous road, leading only to confusion and the shadow of doubt. Yet there he was, like a scholar weighed down by his knowledge, his appearance raising more questions than answers, in an atmosphere filled with a heavy sense of curiosity. Why was there such discomfort and avoidance? A possible explanation began to emerge in the uncertain atmosphere. The idea that the pressure of many people watching this conversation was making him feel uneasy and overshadowed. When he talked, his words were full of dodges and roundabout ways, like he was intentionally trying to confuse and sidestep the issue. The question he was supposed to answer was straightforward and almost too simple: why he did what he did. At a critical time, speaking to a nation on the edge, he had shared his fears openly. He was worried about being attacked first, about threats from the West, from groups under the NATO banner, and from high levels of American influence. Whether these fears were grounded in harsh truths or just imaginary worries, they were an important point to understand. However, when it was time to really dive into these worries and explain himself, he didn't directly answer. Instead, he gave a long speech about history that didn't really address the current issues. It felt more like he was avoiding the question rather than answering it, taking a detour through historical events without a clear end in sight. The underlying message seemed to be about claiming control over areas that are currently in conflict, indicating a desire to dodge the real topic at hand. This approach, using historical references, didn't shed light on his true motives, but instead made them even more unclear, casting an even greater shadow on what he truly intended. In the dimly lit hallways that represent the centers of global authority, President Vladimir Putin sent a very serious and frightening message to countries all around the world. He hinted in a very ominous way that Russia was ready and willing to consider using nuclear weapons if pushed. This severe caution was specifically directed at the countries of the West, emphasizing the dangerous possibility of making the already critical situation in Ukraine worse. With the threat of a nuclear war hanging in the air, Putin stated emphatically that if the United States decided to send soldiers to the areas under dispute, Russia would respond with the most serious actions possible. As people around the world paid close attention, the leader of Moscow, showing determination right before an election that was expected to confirm his stronghold on power, talked about being prepared due to Russia's technological and military strengths. Even with the looming threat of a nuclear conflict, Putin mentioned that hurrying into such a disastrous event was not something he saw as needed right now. He did not see the urgency in starting a nuclear attack on Ukraine, even though he was prepared for it. Putin's declaration that Russia was ready for a nuclear showdown happened against a backdrop of the West's unsuccessful efforts to change Russia's aggressive position. From the securely protected Kremlin, on a day made notable by the biting cold winds of March, Putin's statements were heard loud and clear. He outlined a situation in which the presence of American troops on territory Russia claims as its own, or even within the disputed areas of Ukraine, would lead to a response from Russia on a scale hard to imagine. During his speech, Putin brought up the presence of knowledgeable individuals who understand the dynamics of Russian-American relations and the concept of strategic caution in the United States. This, he implied, was a safeguard against rushing into a nuclear conflict. However, the underlying tone of his message was unmistakable. Russia was on the edge of being fully prepared to act in the face of such an extreme situation, should it ever come to pass. The United States has been involved in the development and management of nuclear weapons for many years, a process that has been shaped by the country's changing military goals and advancements in technology. This journey into the realm of nuclear armament began during the Second World War, a time when the world witnessed the power of nuclear weapons for the first and only instance in history. The U.S. made the decision to deploy nuclear bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, a move aimed at bringing the conflict to a swift conclusion. The bombings had a profound impact, resulting in the loss of thousands of lives, both military personnel and civilians, and causing widespread destruction. Dive into the escalating nuclear arms rivalry between the U.S. and Russia, setting the stage for a story of power, fear, and the quest for dominance. The U.S. versus Russia, an apocalyptic update on the nuclear arms race. In the years that followed the war, particularly throughout the duration of the Cold War, the United States found itself in a tense standoff with the Soviet Union. This period of geopolitical tension fueled a rapid expansion of the U.S.'s nuclear capabilities. Eager to maintain a position of strength, the U.S. developed an array of nuclear weapons. This arsenal ranged from smaller, tactical nuclear weapons designed for battlefield use to the creation of enormously powerful hydrogen bombs, capable of causing unprecedented destruction. By the year 1990, the inventory of the United States nuclear warheads had grown to exceed 70,000 units, encompassing over 65 distinct varieties of nuclear devices. The undertaking to build, house, and maintain such a vast array of nuclear weaponry, as well as to manage the environmental cleanup of their byproducts, represented a significant financial commitment for the U.S. government. When adjusted for inflation to reflect current monetary values, the cost associated with these activities is estimated to have reached at least $10.9 trillion. This figure underscores the immense resources that have been dedicated to the nuclear weapons program of the United States over the decades, highlighting the complex interplay between national security interests and the technological evolution of military capabilities. After the Cold War ended, the United States has been working on reducing the number of its nuclear weapons and has stopped making new ones. Despite this, the U.S. is also putting money into updating the nuclear weapons it still has and making new ways to deliver them. For example, the U.S. is creating a new type of bomb called the B-6112 gravity bomb. This bomb is meant to take the place of all the old gravity bombs, and it's expected to cost about $10 billion to develop. There's also a new missile being made, known as the AGM-181 Long-Range Standoff Weapon, LRSO. This missile, which will be ready by 2030, is designed to take over from an older missile, the AGM-86B, and will carry an updated version of the W-84 nuclear warhead. Right now, the United States has 7 different kinds of nuclear weapons. These include weapons for submarines that can launch missiles under the sea, missiles that can travel across continents, missiles launched from airplanes, and gravity bombs. There's a plan to make this collection of weapons simpler, called the 3+2 strategy. The goal is to have only 3 types of warheads for the missiles that can travel very far. 1 type of gravity bomb, the B-61, and 1 type of warhead for the missiles launched from airplanes. The strategy behind the United States' use of nuclear weapons is focused on protecting the country and preventing others from attacking it with their own nuclear weapons. The work being done to update the nuclear arsenal is all about making sure the weapons are reliable, safe, and effective. This means fixing problems with old weapons and making sure the United States can respond to new kinds of threats. Part of this update includes adding new, smaller nuclear warheads and missile systems. These updates are in response to changes in the world, like Russia making more of its own nuclear weapons that are designed for use on the battlefield. The idea is to make the U.S. arsenal more suited to the current needs of national security, taking into account both old and new challenges. Recent changes have sparked a lot of discussion about what direction the United States is taking with its nuclear weapons policy, particularly when it comes to promises about not spreading nuclear weapons and reducing the number we have. When new types of nuclear warheads, such as the W-93 for submarines that launch ballistic missiles, were introduced, it was a clear departure from earlier policies that tried to avoid adding new nuclear capabilities and doing tests. This move highlights the struggle to keep a balance between making sure the U.S. has a strong defense through its nuclear deterrent and sticking to international agreements to control and reduce nuclear arms. In light of growing tensions and the ongoing conversation about Russia's nuclear powers, it's crucial to take a closer look at what Russia has in terms of nuclear weapons, its plans for using them, and any recent updates. Russia's collection of nuclear weapons is diverse and complex, including both old weapons from the Soviet Union era and newer updated ones. These modern weapons are part of Russia's effort to make sure it can protect itself and maintain its power on the global stage. As of the year 2023, Russia was reported to have around 4,489 nuclear warheads. Of these, 1,674 were strategic warheads, placed on ballistic missiles or at bases for heavy bombers, ready to be used if necessary. There were also another 999 strategic warheads and 1,816 non-strategic warheads, not immediately in use but kept in reserve. Russia has a wide-ranging plan to update its nuclear weapons, aiming to replace most of the older Soviet-era arsenal by the end of the 2020s. This plan shows Russia's intent to keep up its security and its ability to deter others through the strength of its nuclear weapons, while also navigating the challenges of maintaining such a large and diverse arsenal in the modern world. Russia has been adding new types of weapons to its nuclear arsenal, including very fast missiles known as hypersonic missiles, with names like Avangard, Kinzhal, and Zircon. These weapons are interesting because they can move so fast and in ways that make it hard for other countries to stop them with their missile defense systems. However, even though these hypersonic missiles are very advanced and can move incredibly quickly, experts believe they don't really change the big picture when it comes to nuclear warfare. This is because they don't make it much harder for countries that might be targeted to prepare and respond in time. One of the biggest worries about these missiles is that they can be used in 2 ways. They can carry either regular explosives or nuclear bombs. This dual-use capability makes it difficult for other countries to know exactly what kind of threat they are facing, which could lead to mistakes and potentially dangerous misunderstandings during tense situations. There's also a lot of talk about Russia's tactical or non-strategic nuclear weapons. These are nuclear weapons that aren't meant to cause widespread destruction over long distances, but can still be very powerful. It's hard to say exactly how many of these weapons Russia has, because many can be used in both non-nuclear and nuclear ways. The numbers might be anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000. These weapons include old models as well as some that are newer. And there's a lot of debate about how many are ready to use and whether Russia plans to replace some with newer versions. In addition to these, Russia has been working on and starting to use other new types of nuclear weapons. This includes a missile powered by nuclear energy called Burevestnik, and a very big missile that can travel across continents called the Sarmat ICBM. These new additions are part of Russia's plan to keep itself safe and discourage other countries from attacking. The Sarmat missile is especially notable because it can carry many nuclear warheads and can reach any place in the world. This shows that Russia is continuing to develop its nuclear capabilities as part of its strategy to protect itself and deter others from posing a threat. Explore the aftermath of the Cold War, revealing the U.S.'s strategic moves to reduce its nuclear arsenal while also modernizing its remaining weapons. Are we in a new nuclear Cold War? Over the years, Russia's approach to nuclear weapons and its commitment to international agreements aimed at controlling these arms have seen significant changes. The country has been a part of several important treaties meant to regulate nuclear arms, including the New START Treaty with the United States. This particular agreement caps the number of strategic nuclear warheads each country can have at 1,550. Despite such participation, Russia's recent decisions to halt its involvement in the New START and to exit the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty indicate a nuanced and sometimes conflicting stance towards global nuclear arms control efforts. On a certain Wednesday, the White House took its time before commenting on statements made by Vladimir Putin. Previously, officials had noted that there were no clear signs suggesting Russia was gearing up for nuclear weapon use. They seem to believe that Putin is mainly using nuclear threats as a tactic to instill fear, rather than indicating actual plans to deploy nuclear weapons. Mikhailo Podolyak, an advisor to the Ukrainian president, echoed similar sentiments in a conversation with Reuters. He interpreted Putin's nuclear warnings as a form of psychological warfare designed to unsettle Western nations. By consistently resorting to nuclear threats, Podolyak argued, Putin aims to intimidate his adversaries into submission, revealing a potential underlying fear of defeat in the conflict. The narrative took a turn the following Thursday in Tokyo when Rafael Grossi, who leads the UN's Nuclear Safety Organization, downplayed the likelihood of a nuclear conflict. Having met with Putin shortly before, Grossi conveyed a message of reassurance. He stated that based on the current circumstances surrounding the war in Ukraine, there seems to be no imminent threat that would justify the use of nuclear weapons. This assessment suggests a disconnect between the alarm raised by nuclear rhetoric and the actual readiness or intention to engage in nuclear warfare, offering a glimmer of hope amidst tensions. Grossi's comments reflect an international perspective that, despite the heated exchanges and dire warnings, the prospect of a nuclear war remains, for now, a distant possibility. The current situation has escalated tensions between Moscow and countries in the West to a level not seen since the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. The issue has grown so severe that it is often compared to that historic standoff which had the world on the brink of nuclear war. Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, has frequently discussed the potential for nuclear conflict, suggesting it's a real possibility, while simultaneously stating that he does not believe there is a justification for deploying nuclear weapons in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. As the United States prepares for its upcoming presidential election, there is widespread debate and uncertainty regarding the best way to assist Ukraine in its struggle against Russia. Russia has managed to seize a substantial portion of Ukrainian territory and is arming itself at a rate that neither the Western countries nor Ukraine can match. Ukraine, for its part, is resolutely defending itself against what it perceives as an aggressive attempt by Russia to annex its territory and eradicate its national identity. From Putin's perspective, the deployment of a significant military force into Ukraine in February 2022 was a defensive measure aimed at safeguarding Russia from what he views as aggression by Western nations. Putin has revisited the topic of nuclear weapon use, guided by the official policies outlined in Russia's nuclear strategy document. This document lays out the conditions under which Russia would consider using its nuclear arsenal. If Russia is attacked with nuclear weapons or other weapons of mass destruction, or if an attack with conventional weapons poses a direct threat to the Russian state's existence. Putin's forthright statement on the matter was a reminder that Russia possesses nuclear weapons and is prepared to use them under certain circumstances. The entire scenario underscores the deeply strained relations between Moscow and Western countries, reminiscent of the Cold War tensions highlighted during the Cuban Missile Crisis. The dialogue around nuclear weapons by Putin serves as a stark reminder of the high stakes involved, even as he maintains that the current conflict in Ukraine does not warrant their use. Meanwhile, the ongoing conflict has exposed significant challenges for the international community in supporting Ukraine while addressing the rapid militarization of Russia. This complex web of geopolitical tensions, military strategies, and the haunting specter of nuclear conflict highlights the critical need for cautious and deliberate diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the situation. Putin gave a warning, but also hinted at the possibility of discussing Ukraine to find a new security arrangement for Europe after the Cold War. Despite this, the United States believes Putin isn't genuinely interested in having a meaningful dialogue about Ukraine. The situation regarding Ukraine is complex, with ongoing changes in military, diplomatic, and geopolitical areas. The United States has played a significant role in supporting Ukraine, especially in its defense against Russian hostility. Since Russia launched a full-scale invasion on February 24, 2022, the U.S. has given Ukraine around $44.2 billion in military help. If we look at the entire period starting from Russia's initial attack in 2014, the total assistance goes beyond $47 billion. This aid has covered a variety of defense needs, including systems for air defense, artillery, tanks, armored vehicles, and ammunition, highlighting the U.S.'s dedication to Ukraine's right to self-governance and to its territorial borders remaining respected. However, there's been a noticeable change in strategy from the Biden administration. The focus has shifted towards enhancing Ukraine's defense capabilities and possibly reorganizing Ukrainian forces to better counter Russian movements. The goal seems to be getting Ukraine into a stronger position for future negotiations for peace, all while keeping in mind the current political and military situations. Efforts are being made to improve air defenses, establish more defenses along the border, and rejuvenate Ukraine's defense production sector to lessen its reliance on help from other countries for military purposes. If this problem isn't solved, it could become a very big mistake because Russia has a lot of requests. Russia's rules, what they want for peace. The relationship between Ukraine and NATO, including how this relationship affects broader international dealings, especially with the US and European allies, is intricate and continually developing. NATO has shown solid backing for Ukraine, with its members providing various forms of aid, military, financial, and humanitarian. Moreover, discussions are taking place about possibly speeding up Ukraine's inclusion into NATO. This strategy is viewed as a way to improve Ukraine's bargaining power in negotiations with Moscow and to strengthen its stand against Russian military actions. This approach aims not only to support Ukraine in the immediate conflict, but also to secure a long-term solution that acknowledges and respects Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. At the very center of the support NATO offers lies a solid promise made by the G7 countries to Ukraine. This promise involves a plan for one-on-one talks to provide different kinds of help, including military and monetary support, the sharing of important information, and the assurance of taking immediate action if Russia decides to launch another attack. Moreover, this support is not limited to the G7 countries alone. It extends to a broader international circle, including major countries like Britain, France, Germany, and the US. These countries have pledged to supply Ukraine with the latest military equipment, such as fighter jets, and to assist in training, sharing intelligence, and enhancing Ukraine's cyber defense capabilities. In exchange for this substantial support, Ukraine has committed to improving its governance. This improvement is expected to come through the implementation of judicial and economic reforms, along with a push for greater openness and transparency. The relationship between NATO and Ukraine has changed a lot over time, showing how the world's politics are complex and how countries react to the challenges they face. Ukraine really wants to join NATO quickly because they are worried about Russia's aggressive actions, especially after Russia took over more of Ukraine's land. Ukraine's desire to join NATO was clearly shown when President Volodymyr Zelensky asked for a faster way to become a member. He talked about how Ukraine is already living by NATO's rules and dreams of being more connected with them. However, NATO has been careful in its first reactions, choosing to help Ukraine in practical ways right now, instead of adding it as a new member immediately. This careful way of acting is supported by what important people from NATO, like Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, and from the United States, like National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, have said. They talk about continuing to help Ukraine fight and think about adding it as a member later. Following these events, NATO decided to help Ukraine get closer to the alliance by creating a big new plan. This plan is supposed to help Ukraine move away from old Soviet military ways to those that match NATO's. The plan is not just about changing how the military works. It also includes rebuilding Ukraine's safety and defense from the ground up. They want to focus on very important needs like fuel, equipment for removing mines, and medical supplies. Additionally, creating a NATO-Ukraine Council means that they want to have deeper talks and make decisions together, treating everyone equally and making the bond between Ukraine and NATO stronger. A big change is that Ukraine doesn't need to follow a membership action plan anymore, making it easier for them to join NATO by skipping some steps. But Ukraine still needs all NATO countries to agree and meet certain requirements before officially joining. All these changes show how NATO is trying to find the right balance between helping Ukraine against Russia's threats and dealing with the tricky politics of adding new members to the alliance. By changing procedures and starting new help programs for Ukraine, NATO is showing that it wants to support Ukraine. This way of doing things is meant to deal with immediate dangers, but also aims to make Europe's security stronger in facing Russia's aggression. The fact that Sweden and Finland also want to join NATO shows how the security situation in Europe is changing and how NATO is ready to respond to these changes. However, the road ahead is not without its hurdles. The ongoing conflict has raised questions about the West's enduring commitment to Ukraine, especially considering the political and economic strains being felt in countries like the US and across Europe. There's a growing concern among the populations of these Western countries about war fatigue, which is the weariness of being involved in or supporting a prolonged conflict. Additionally, there are rising worries about the financial burdens of continuing to back Ukraine, which include the potential for higher inflation rates and energy shortages. These internal challenges in the supporting countries might make it difficult to sustain the level of aid and military backing that Ukraine needs, especially through the winter months and possibly even longer. We are delving into a topic that is both intricate and widespread, focusing on how the United States of America is handling its own political challenges, as well as its relationships with countries across the globe. This situation is particularly about America's quest to find a balance between solving its internal political issues and managing its interactions with other nations. At the heart of this discussion is the significant support the U.S. has pledged to Ukraine, which includes a substantial amount of money and military aid. This move by the U.S. highlights its commitment to helping Ukraine during difficult times. However, there's a growing conversation about how Ukraine, in return, should show more appreciation towards the United States and its Western allies. The point being made is that in the face of large-scale challenges that span across borders, there's a critical need for countries to work together in harmony and respect one another's contributions. On the other side of the equation, Russian President Vladimir Putin has shared his thoughts on what it would take for any agreement to be reached concerning the ongoing issues. He has made it clear that any deal must include clear, written guarantees that address Russia's security concerns in a manner that Russia finds acceptable. Putin has been very direct, admitting that he doesn't trust easily, but emphasizing the necessity for concrete, unambiguous assurances documented in a way that Russia would approve of. President Putin has taken steps to tighten the protection around its borders to further enhance Russia's security. He has instructed the country's security agencies to be more vigilant and proactive in identifying and dealing with individuals within Russia who might be acting against the country's interests, whether through treason, spying, or sabotage. These efforts are happening at a time when Russia is increasingly showing its military might and form part of a larger strategy aimed at ensuring the safety of both Russia and the territories it has claimed in Ukraine. Putin has talked about the importance of employing every possible measure, including deploying special military units and utilizing the most advanced technologies, to secure the well-being of people living in these disputed areas. This comprehensive approach to security demonstrates Russia's intense focus on protecting itself against both internal and external threats, signaling the gravity with which it views the current geopolitical tensions. This entire scenario sheds light on the complex web of political and security issues that the world is currently navigating. The United States, in its effort to address these challenges, is showing a strong commitment to supporting Ukraine, while also calling for unity and mutual respect among nations confronted with shared difficulties. Meanwhile, Russia's actions and demands highlight its deep concerns for national security and sovereignty, leading to a fortified stance against perceived threats. This ongoing global narrative of political maneuvering and security strategies illustrates the intricate dance of international relations in today's interconnected and often contentious world. Is Russia ready to go nuclear? Share your views in the comments below. Smash that like and subscribe for more.